Okay, so we're going to move now from the data-driven human experience that Gaurav has just presented onto another critical trend in the hotel sector, which is the eco and adventure tourism segment, and particularly the opportunities in this region for eco and adventure tourism, targeting what is referred to in the program notes as the Avocado Generation. So James Wrenn, who is the Senior Manager for Hotels for Colliers International in the Middle East and North Africa, is going to explain what that means. So please welcome James. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Richard. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Colliers' discussion today about eco, wellness, agri, and adventure tourism in the Middle East, and especially having regard to the new generation of travelers, the millennials, or as we like to call them, the Avocado Generation. So, as you know, the Avocado Generation, they don't like beans on toast for breakfast. They're spending a lot of money on avocado on toast and overpriced coffee. So these are the primary market that are staying in these types of hotels and resorts, not just in the region itself, but right across the world. So it's very important that any resorts developed in this space reach out to this new generation of travelers. So today's talk, just a brief overview of Colliers International. If you're not familiar with our company, we're an international real estate firm, providing advice across all sectors of the real estate market. Our team looks after the hotels side of the business. We're in the Middle East quite a long time, over 20 years. We do everything from feasibility studies, valuations, all the way to asset management, cost consulting, and project management in the hotel space. So today we'll talk briefly about what is Eva Tourism. That's our short form for eco, wellness, agri, and adventure tourism, which we'll refer to throughout the presentation, give you a brief overview what's entailed in that type of tourism. How is Eva concepts being activated in the region at the moment? The Middle East is at the forefront of these concepts at present, right across, not just in the hotel business, but from government sectors, government initiatives, so we'll deep dive into that. We're also looking at current Eva lodging facilities in the Middle East at the moment, get some key learnings from them. What are the key characteristics of how these types of resorts actually operate in terms of profitability, in terms of seasonality, etc. So we'll give you some of our key learnings from recent market research that we have undertaken in that sector. Obviously, we're at a hotel investment conference, so we'll hopefully give you some key learnings how to develop profitable eco, wellness, agri, and adventure resorts. So, to start, we'll look briefly at what is Eva Tourism. So, the four key pillars of Eva Tourism. The first is ecotourism. Now, ecotourism entails obviously mostly around the natural environment, about conservation, and I suppose we're blessed with that type of abundance of desert areas and wadis, for instance, and very mountainous areas, especially in the Northern Emirates. Wellness tourism is more focused on your overall well-being, from sports, from spa facilities, wellness treatments, etc. Adventure tourism is obviously more into physical activity and mostly around the outdoor environment. And agri tourism then is a really emerging sector actually right across the world, looking at farming, activation in that area, and in terms of education as well. So hands-on experience in the agri sector, from cooking, fresh produce, picking your own produce while in a resort, for instance, is becoming really popular, especially in areas such as Thailand. So, as I mentioned earlier on, the concepts around the four key pillars of Eva Tourism are really growing over the last number of years, and I think that's evident for all of us to see. And the government sectors right across the Middle East are really getting behind the concepts around Eva. So if we look at, for instance, Oman, a key part of their tourism strategy, we all know that they're really blessed with natural resources and a beautiful ecology in Oman, but they've put it at the center of their new tourism strategy, which was released last year, to grow and double tourist numbers over the next decade or so. And a key part of their tourism strategy is around ecotourism and sustainability. So a key pillar of the plan, like I mentioned, of achieving their goals is in that key sector of ecotourism. If we look at Dubai, especially under the guidance of the Crown Prince, there's been numerous initiatives in terms of health, fitness and well-being, especially over the last number of years. Dubai Fitness Challenge, I know it's not from a tourist perspective, but it shows you the amount of time and effort the government are putting in to increase people's well-being. And they've had over 1 million participants across various different events and for using the app in that sector. So Dubai Fitness Challenge has been a really, really successful initiative that Dubai government have taken. Here, we're all here in Ras Al Khaimah, and as we all know, Ras Al Khaimah is positioning itself as the adventure tourism capital of the entire region, and they've had some great success stories over the last number of years, especially, and they put physical money into capital investments, such as the longest zip line in the world, the Via Ferrata, for climbing enthusiasts. They have a number of new walking routes that are due to open shortly, I understand, as well. So you can see work happening on the ground by governments right across the region, and RAC is at the forefront of this. More emerging space is obviously the agri side of things. Now, agriculture in this region, we all know, due to the weather constraints and whatnot, it's quite difficult for agri to really flourish in the region. However, there is a lot of investment happening on the government side of things, especially in the UAE, where we import 90% of all our food produce in the UAE is exported. So obviously the government are investing a lot in this sector to produce more homegrown food, and especially in the organic space and technology around greenhouses especially. So these 4 concepts of Eva Tourism, there is substantial investment happening, especially at government level, right across the Middle East region. So how do we tap into all these 4 concepts? How do we make hotels fit into the jigsaw of Eva Tourism? So looking at what type of lodging facilities could be offered in the space and what's being offered in the market at the moment, and what can we do as hotel investors and developers and operators in the room here today? How can we come together and exploit this space even further in the Middle East, which has a lot of untapped potential, we feel. So looking at Eva lodging currently in the Middle East, and if we focus on UAE, obviously we're in UAE today, and even this evening a lot of us will go to a desert resort. So over the last decade or so, there's been a number of very high profile desert resorts developed which have tapped into the Eva concepts. For instance, the Ritz-Carlton Al Wadi, which we just mentioned, Bab Al Shams just outside Dubai as well. But a lot of the desert resorts are in that luxury space. There's not a whole pile of resorts catering to the mid-market or upscale space. So that's a key area we feel for growth over the next number of years. So in these resorts, how are they making money? How are they, what type of business do they do? Obviously they have a lot of constraints, a lot of issues they have to deal with in terms of seasonality, for instance. But if there's a few key success factors and a few key takeaways we've done from studying these types of resorts in the region. So typically, we see that the Eva resorts are high demand mostly for weekend and holiday periods. We see the business during the week can be quite difficult for a number of, say, desert resorts or eco resorts right across the region. It's mostly a weekend and holiday time business. You can say that the average length of stay is also a lot shorter. Typically, people won't spend a week there as they would, say, on a sun and sand holiday destination if they were coming to Ras Al Khaimah, for instance, booking in the typical German or Russian market. They might stay for 7 nights. Whereas ecotourism, as part of a trip, some typical outside source markets might come as part of their stay 2 nights in an eco lodge or a desert resort, for instance, and maybe continue on for the rest of their trip somewhere else. And a more sun and sand type resort offering. So we see that from studying the eco wellness, agri and adventure resorts that we have in the region, it is typically weekend and holiday business, and the weekday business can be quite difficult for them to achieve. We're saying medium occupancies, but the rates can be very strong, as we all know. If we want to book a nice desert resort this weekend, we know the rates can be very high in the good season. So you're seeing occupancies being on the mid-range. However, the average rates can be extremely high in the high seasons. There's a heavily focus on leisure tourism, obviously they're resorts, and most of the business is on the leisure side. However, the corporate sector is maybe a small percentage of the business, but maybe it's something that the operators and owners and developers in the region go at a bit further, because during the weekdays, there's a lot of business that could be got maybe on the corporate side, from retreats, for instance, corporate retreats, corporate meetings, getaway type meetings, strategy away days. With some resorts as well that are emerging in the mid-market space, are going after the schools, running kind of summer camp type things during school holidays, Easter camps, for instance, and various different type of experiences for going after more the younger adults or children, giving them skills in all this type of space. So that area of the business, the corporate business, the schools business, to promote more midweek is very important for EWA resorts. So how can you develop a profitable hotel or EWA resort in this region? So as Colliers, we looked at two things. Firstly, on the design. The design is very, very important for these types of resorts. An efficient area program, like all hotel investments, is very, very important, especially for these types of projects. In terms of materials, in terms of interiors, minimalistic and contemporary is very in vogue at the moment, as we all know. It's also a bit cheaper to construct. And it's also more appealing to the market. Remember, the main market for these types of resorts isn't you know, older generations. It's the younger generation, the millennial generation. It's for mostly 18 to 35-year-olds, young families, young couples, groups of friends going on vacation, like I said. So you have to take that into consideration when you're designing an EWA resort. Funky interiors, like I mentioned, alternative and cheaper building concepts as well, because a lot of these resorts are obviously in more isolated, maybe rural locations. In some instances, if we look at the Maras development in Hatta, just outside Dubai, if anyone's not familiar with the area, it's on a dam area. Maras last year put in some considerable investment. They done container accommodation there, also caravan accommodation, and really activated the whole area, bringing in abundance of adventure sports as well, such as canoeing, rafting, for instance, and has totally transformed this beautiful, beautiful area. But what did they do? How did they make it successful? They developed it by looking at alternative accommodation types, and the whole area has been transformed. And alternative accommodation types in this space is very, very important to consider. Obviously, they not only look cool, they not only look funky, they look very appealing to this generation and this type of audience. However, obviously, in this area, they can be a lot cheaper to build. And if we look at some of our colleagues here today, Earth Hotels are exploring this space a lot at the moment, and I think they have a stand outside. You can see a little prototype of a container hotel development. So this type of accommodation is very important in this space. We have to look at designs that are appealing, like I said, to the generation, Instagrammable, as we all know. No one goes on holidays anymore and doesn't take at least 7 photos a day. So it's very important the accommodation is appealing to the eye. Operations side, we looked at the operational constraints as well when we studied the market. Obviously, seasonality is an issue. If we look, I bring it back to the Maras development, for instance. They're actually going to close now for the season from the 1st of May to the 1st of October. So it's their first year in operation, but they've decided to close for the summer months, maybe the low periods. So it's very important to have lean operational costs, a very heavy focus on marketing, looking at alternative ways as well in terms of F&B outsourcing, bringing in, working with different brands. Now that can be difficult as well, depending on your location. If you're far away from a key city, then it can be hard to do, I suppose, that type of maybe joint ventures or outsource leasing for F&B. However, in more maybe central locations, this is a really good idea to bring well-known brands into your space. So even on the operational side, there's no need to, if you even want to outsource the breakfast, it's very important that you put avocado on toast on the menu as well. No need for the full Irish. I'm a full Irish man, but I think I'll go for avocado on toast if I go for one of these resorts. It's very, very important. So I think that's, but my time is up. If anyone has any questions, I can talk to you after. We just done a research paper on this whole area of Eva Tourism. We just released it to the market in coordination with AHIC this week. So we've plenty of good information here on Eva Tourism and how to design an efficient and profitable EWA hotel. So thank you very much.